Well, Moses is at it again. God has been attempting to call him out to be his instrument to bring redemption and release to captive Israel. And Moses just has objection after objection after objection, and God has enough. So let's dive in to see, how does God deal with an obstinate servant, an obstinate instrument? Exodus 4, 1 through 17. Then Moses replied, "But what if they don't believe me or pay attention to me? They might say to me, 'The Lord didn't appear to you.' The Lord said to him, 'What's that in your hand?' Moses replied, 'A shepherd's rod.' The Lord said, 'Throw it down on the ground.' So Moses threw it on the ground, and it turned into a snake. Moses jumped back from it. Then the Lord said to Moses, 'Reach out and grab the snake by the tail.' So Moses reached out and grabbed it, and it turned back into a rod in his hand. 'Do this so that they will believe that the Lord, the God of their ancestors, Abraham's God, Isaac's God, and Jacob's God, has in fact appeared to you.' Again the Lord said to Moses, 'Put your hand inside your coat.' So Moses put his hand inside his coat. When he took out his hand had a skin disease and flaky like snow. Then God said, 'Put your hand back inside your coat.' So Moses put his hand back inside his coat. When he took it back out again, the skin of his hand had returned to normal. If they won't believe you or pay attention to the first sign, they may believe the second sign. If they won't believe even these two signs or pay attention to you, then take some of the water out of the Nile River, pour it out on the dry ground. The water that you take from the Nile will turn into blood on the dry ground." But Moses said to the Lord, "My Lord, I've never been able to speak well. Not yesterday, not the day before, and certainly not now since you've been talking to your servant. I have a slow mouth and a thick tongue." Then the Lord said to him, "Who gives people the ability to speak? Who is responsible for making them unable to speak, or hard of hearing, or sighted, or blind? Isn't it I, the Lord? Now go, I will help you speak. I will teach you what you should say." But Moses said, "Please, my Lord, just send someone else." Then the Lord got angry at Moses and said, "What about your brother Aaron the Levite? I know he can speak very well. He's on his way out to meet you now, and he's looking forward to seeing you. Speak to him. Tell him what he's supposed to say. I'll help both of you speak, and I'll tell you both what you should do. Aaron will speak for you to the people. He'll be a spokesperson for you, and you will be like God for him. Take this shepherd's rod with you too, so that you can do the signs." Well, there is a ton we can only briefly brush on here, but so this is a sequence now of Moses objecting to God. He has all these reasons, all these excuses, fears, doubts. He says, "Why me? What's your name? What if they don't believe me? And what if they don't listen to me? God, I can't speak. I have a slow mouth and a thick tongue. I have a stutter, Lord. Please, I hate public speaking." There's all these reasons, excuse after excuse after excuse. God gives him some signs that we could spend so much depth in. The first sign, the Moses who is able to conquer this snake. He turns a rod into a snake and then picks it up, turns it back into a rod. There has to be at least some allusion back to Genesis chapter 3 here, where God tells Eve that out of her, the seed of this woman will be the one who's the snake crusher. And there's just a little bit of an allusion here, but certainly something that the ancient Hebrews would have cued into. So you could look at that. This disease, his skin turns flaky and then clean again. God is the God who is in control of ritual purity, of clean and unclean. Water into blood. He is the God who is in control of life and death itself. There's more, but we could keep going into that. These signs are important in their own right. I want to then focus most of our time, just the short time we have, down here though. So God gives him these great signs to kind of point to this God who is the God of creation, of life and death, of clean and unclean, all of that. And then here, Moses won't hear it. Moses is seeing the signs, he's living these signs, and he still has the nerve to object and say, "God, please just send someone else." He's done making excuses. He just says, "But Lord, really, I don't want to do it." And God gets angry at Moses. And this is huge because if you look it up, this right here is the first time in the whole Bible, first time God gets angry, at least written angry. Now think about that. I did the word search. I tried to find it. We might be surprised by that because there's a lot of moments, especially in Genesis, where we think of God as being angry. right? God casting out Adam and Eve from the garden in Genesis 3. God bringing the flood with Noah. And there he's described as grieved. He's never described as angry. You have the Tower of Babel in Genesis chapter 11. You have all the convoluted journey of Abraham, of Isaac, of Jacob, and so many times these figures are messing up and ruining things over and over and over again. And never once is it described as God getting angry. Right here is the very first time. And I find that really important. Whenever something like this shows up for the first time in the Bible, we should stop and pay attention and just ask, so what gets God angry here? What is it that for the first time the biblical narrators decided to say, this is the moment that I want to tell you about God's anger? And it's a man who God chooses to bring his message of redemption to a nation, to an oppressed group of slaves who are dealing with injustice and oppression. And God has chosen Moses to be his instrument to go bring healing and life and redemption, a great good news message. And Moses just has excuses after fears, after doubts. Please, Lord, just send someone else. And the first time God gets angry is for someone who he has chosen to bring that message to a group of people who desperately need it. Just stop and let that sink in for a little bit. That is the thing that God gets angry at here. And God gets angry at other things. He's angry at sin. He's angry at oppression. He's angry at a lot of other things, of pride, of lust, of greed, sure. But the first time God is described as being angry is a chosen instrument refusing to do the work of bringing that good news to someone who desperately needs it. That was convicting to me. How many times does God have someone in my life who desperately needs God's message of redemption, God's healing, God's life, God's transformation? There are so many people in our lives that need that message, that need that connection with the God of the universe. But because I have just way too many excuses, way too many fears, way too many doubts, how many times have I done this over and over and over again? God, please just send someone else. And that is the thing that God gets angry at. Think about that this week. What ways might we be in the place of Moses, making excuse after excuse, and God saying, I just want you to go. I am with you. I am going to give you the words to speak. You have people to bring this message of healing to. Just go. And that's the thing that kind of shows God's heart. He doesn't dismiss Moses out of hand. He says, I'm still committed to you, Moses. I'm still going to use you. God's anger at Moses doesn't negate Moses's ability to partner with God, which is another whole other rabbit trail of grace. But it's really telling to see what is it the thing that God gets angry at, and how are we, like Moses, making excuses after excuses? I hope that message was as convicting for you as it is for me. Where have you made excuses out of your fear, out of your doubts? But God actually wants us to be his vessel to bring this good news to someone else. Is there someone in your life this week that needs to hear that good news of healing, of life, of redemption? And how can we kind of step into Moses' shoes and say, God, take my doubts, take my fears. I need to be your willing instrument.